Got a simple shop project today. We'll be installing a Triton, my new Triton 3¼ horsepower router into the extension wing of my Sawstop table saw. First thing to do is to get everything out of the box, throw the instructions away, and get to work. The Triton routers are dual purpose routers, so the first thing I have to do is remove this spring that's under this cap here. Most routers have a motor you take in and out of the base. The Triton's all made together, but part of the plunge mode is this spring. When you're using it in just the rack and pinion mode under a table, you remove that spring. So I'll take the spring out and put the cap back in place. Next step, I have to remove the plastic base that's on the bottom of the router. Take the first two screws out, and then I decided I needed to mark which side the power switch was on so I knew how to mount it in the router. I'll be using a base as a template here in a minute to drill holes in the top of my table. So I'll mark where the above the table height adjustment and also where the power switch is. Now I'm laying out where the holes will go, centering the plate up, and you see here toward the right side of the screen I'm going to have the router as close to the actual cast iron top of the table saw as I can get, because underneath there there's support, and that'll help keep the router table part from sagging over time. After the holes are marked, take this little point here and I'm making a little indentation for the drill bit to have a place to start so it doesn't wander on me when I go to drill the holes. Drilling the holes here for the mounting screws that will hold the router, and doing the best I can to make sure the holes are straight up and down. Get all four of those holes drilled, and then the next step is to drill a countersink. That's just for the screws to sit down flush with the top of the table. After those holes are made, the next step is to drill a larger hole, and this is where the above table height adjustment mechanism will go through. So I just drill a straight hole there and then check just to make sure that it fits and turns freely. One more hole to make in the top before we mount the router, and that will be the hole for the bit to go through. So here I mark it, center it, and mark it with my largest Forstner bit, and now I'm drilling a center hole. This is a 2 1/4 inch hole. A little bit of cleanup, and now it's time to mount the router underneath. And with a little bit of free child labor, there you see my son, he's actually holding the router up while I put in the screws from the top. This was not too difficult, but once you got the first hole lined up, the rest were easy to line up. So get all 4 screws snugged up, and I check the height adjustment mechanism to make sure it works, and we're good to go. I have a video coming out next week on the fence that I use for this. There'll be a link in the description once that's up. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe.